Combat in almost any MMO is often that crucial component which keeps players engaged with the game. If the combat feels empty, there's a high chance players will become bored and just quit the game. In this video, I want to go over the different combat styles we typically see in an MMO and which style might best fit the Riot MMO. Of course, since all of this is speculation due to these details not being revealed, take this video with a grain of salt. The first combat style I'm covering is tab targeting, and this combat style is typically where a player specifically targets one enemy at a time, and spells will automatically track to that target. Little to no aiming is required. When you want to focus on a different target, you would select tab, hence tab targeting. Popular games that employ this combat style are World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. I would say the pros of tab targeting are that it's the most accessible combat style. When I say accessible, I mean it's very easy to pick up and learn. Tab targeting also allows for a little bit more interesting encounters in my opinion. When you look at something like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, the encounters allow you to make a lot of choices, and those types of games are often praised for their raid encounters. When I say tab targeting allows for more interesting fight encounters, I guess what I'm trying to say is the developers are free to make a little bit more interesting multiple target encounters versus some of these other combat styles. Moving on to the cons of tab targeting, I would say it's not always the smoothest, most immersive combat style out there. Often with tab targeting, you're limited by GCDs and cast times, which can sometimes feel a little clunky. This isn't to say developers can't make a cool interactive tab targeting system, it's just that the skills are generally more bland by comparison. Moving on to the second combat style, we have Action Combat. Action Combat is a free targeting and attacking combat style, meaning you don't select a target to hit. You just input your attack and it will hit in a designated hitbox around or in front of your character. Games that utilize Action Combat would be something like Black Desert Online, Lost Ark, or like the classic WildStar. Pros of using Action Combat are that it's the most fast-paced and immersive combat style that flows well and generally lets you make combos on the fly. When I say it's fast-paced, this is usually due to how you can interact with other players and mobs in the world. Attacks in these games can almost all be avoided, usually. So by making quick decisions on whether or not you should block, dodge, or counter, or whatever else, you'll always be making an interesting interactive choice. The cons of Action Combat are that playing on any remotely high latency can make this style feel very unresponsive and just totally unfun. In addition, Action Combat somewhat limits encounter design options because you can't just single target a mob in a pack without doing some sort of frustrating mob manipulation. It would just all become about nuking everything down at once like you see in Black Desert. As another point, playing a support type class in these action-based games can be frustrating because if you miss your heal or other support skills, it can feel really bad for both the support player and the intended target of that support. Lastly, because of the pacing of these types of games, there's a high chance you can physically hurt your wrist if the game has a high APM, which Action Combat typically does. And now for the final combat style, there's Hybrid Combat. This is a mixture between both tab targeting and action-based combat. You will typically still select a target and swap focus using tab, and this targeting system usually just impacts a few aiming skills that hit with a radius or a circle around the target. So instead of having to manually select where the circle hits, it will automatically just hit around your selected target. You would still have free targeting skills, however. These will just be your typical melee attacks and some range attacks that hit linearly or in a cone rather than a circle. Games that utilize hybrid combat are Guild Wars 2 and Swords of Legends Online. The pros of hybrid combat is that it has the immersion of action combat while still allowing for some encounter design flexibility. It's basically just the jack of all trades combat style. The cons for the style would be similar to action-based combat in that higher latency can cause issues. In addition, some multi-target fights can be a little awkward since your attacks are still AoE for the most part and don't allow you to focus down one target at a time, which likely means AoE fights just become nuke everything down at once. So we've covered the core combat systems. What do I think the Riot MMO will utilize? Well, I'm basing my guess off of how League of Legends is played, kind of. Since League's early beginnings, Riot has shifted away from point-and-click spells to more skill-shot-oriented combat. I know this doesn't exactly translate combat style since one is a MOBA and this is going to be an MMO, but I think they'll still want to keep their MMO feeling a little bit more fast-paced without limiting the accessibility too much. As a result, I suspect Riot's MMO will utilize a hybrid combat system. This system offers the best of both worlds. It's more accessible than pure action combat while still offering a more immersive experience than just pure tab targeting. From an accessibility standpoint, the hybrid system still utilizes the tab targeting concept, so a lot of people will still be able to pick it up and learn quickly. This means there's still ways for players to ensure spells hit, as not everything would be a skill shot, and it would be a little bit more friendly to those on a slightly higher latency. It wouldn't be perfect, of course, but it at least allows for some wiggle room. I also think this combat style appeals to at least some aspects of the other communities, such as those who play pure tab targeting games like World of Warcraft and those who are pure action based like in BDO. So by taking this combat style, it really just has a bit more mass appeal. Riot's games also have a way of really letting players show off their skills, which a hybrid system would still allow for, and tab targeting would restrict a little bit of that playmaking ability, at least on the surface level. What I mean by that is if you look at PvP in something like World of Warcraft, it's hard to exactly see when a big play was made because it's all very subtle and about setting up crowd control and line of sighting casts. But in an action or hybrid system, there would likely be a little bit more opportunity for players to visibly dodge spells besides using line of sight tactics. It will have more visual feedback and people will be able to more easily tell when a big play was made if players are avoiding a spell and immediately go on the counterattack. Think of it this way, in League of Legends today, if a player flashes to avoid an incoming skill shot to immediately set themselves up for a kill, those plays feel very good to pull off, and I think we will see a lot more of that in a hybrid system where you will be able to mix between skill shots and targeted skills. But I'm curious to hear what you all think about this topic. Do you have a preference for a certain combat style? Do you agree with my predictions? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you've made it through this whole video, I'd like to take some time to just say thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel for a lot more news, speculation, and some general fun conceptual brainstorming around the Riot MMO. I have an upcoming series where I try to reimagine League of Legends champions as boss encounters that I think will be a lot of fun and interesting to kind of put together. But this was Goober Troy saying thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.